Thank you, Giancarlo, for your magnificent presentation, magnificent reading of the Rome territorial scale, magnificent and original, I must say. I've never seen an interpretation like this in literature. I will try to present an interpretation of Rome, the same topic, to a building scale, giving an idea of the Roman fabric read as urban matter in continuous transformation. This phenomenon takes in Rome the character of stratification. It is a composition of consecutive layers where each new form assumes and interprets in an original way the previous one. This secular stratification has been considered over time by poets and artists as peculiar character of the Roman urban form. Mary James wrote in 1873, "You see that the little stucco edifice is but a modern excrescence on the mighty cliff of a primitive construction. Few things in Rome are more entertaining to the eye than to measure the long plumb line which drops from the inhabited windows to the palace, down to the rugged construction wall of the Republic." This literary and picturesque interpretation, sometimes as amazing as those by Goethe and Stendhal, have, however, favored a double role of Roman heritage in modern architecture, both dangerous, in my opinion. First, an example for the nostalgic admirers of the past. Second, an indication retained negative for modern architects looking for innovation. It's known as Le Corbusier warned that the lesson of Rome is only for the wise and dangerous for students. Perhaps few architects have in fact realized the modernity of the lesson of Rome. Definitely Friedrich Schinkel and Louis Kahn, in my opinion, who have never imitated the architecture of ancient Rome, but understood in an innovative way its profound meaning of organism. In my opinion, the modern message of Rome is contained in the notion of process, and the connected one of formativity, a neologism proposed by the philosopher Luigi Paraison to indicate the development through which the architectural product, to paraphrase the author, is not the result of a certain invention, of a creation, but it is generated by a progression of formative phases. Thus I believe that in reading Rome urban fabric, we should replace the romantic and sometimes overused term of ruin by the rational and for us much more inspiring term of substrata, indicating a not apparent pre-existing matter that generates any following development. It should be noted, moreover, that in the scholastic philosophy of the 14th century, when great urban changes are taking place in Rome, the word substrata indicates the substance itself, the true and stable reality underlying any single transformation. I think that this transformation could be summarized, simplifying a lot, of course, in 4 phases. First phase, from the 5th to 11th century, the organic unity of the Roman world collapses in early Middle Ages. Not by chance, for many historians, the Middle Age begins with the sack of Rome by the barbarian in 410. The huge imperial public structure are abandoned and fragmented. The city, scarcely inhabited, is transformed directly using their remains. The same Latin words indicating building types as domes, for example, are used in a very contradictory meaning. The phase two, from 11th to 15th century, the large increase in population corresponds to a phase of building solidarity, expressed clearly by the percussionness of the notion of fabric intended as aggregative law. From the 13th century, in fact, the Magistri Stradarum imposed building and street regulation. Phase 3, from 15th to 17th century, the continuous facade wall arise in the base building and the rhythmic facade in the special one. In the new Renaissance status, aesthetic principles are introduced. They prescribe to build to decorum civitatis et eorum commoditatem. First the beauty of the city, then the private interest. Even expropriation by private citizens are allowed as long as they will build new palazzos. Phase 4, from the 17th to 19th century, we can consider this period as a conclusion of the cycle. Extensive organic recasting in the urban fabrics take place during the Baroque and post-Baroque periods. An organic relationship between architecture and urban spaces is established. It should be noted how in the development of these phases, the relationship between type and fabric is of a dialectic type. The new building arises from the transformation of the previous fabric here, where each fabric is modified by the building transformation, preparing, we could say, for the next transformation. So any cycle is in that dialectic relationship with the other. Now I'll try to give an idea of these transformations through some examples selected in central ancient Rome. The ancient urban structure can be clearly read in the plan by Marinucci here through three fundamental components: roads, fabrics made by insulae of housing, and area specialized buildings here, large special organisms that form urban nodes. The existing structure have their typical morphology. They can be read through substrata types. Substrata type may be defined, I assume, as building type that has lost its function, its original symbolic role and property boundaries, while retaining some common constructive and geometric characters transmitted to future buildings. The usual distinction between basic and special building is not so helpful in our case, but rather between perimetral courtyard types, both insulae and area, and monumental structure types. We can take an example of the transformation of the block in Via del Pellegrino. You will see the transformation here in this part of the city. The next slide. Here. Actually, there are no excavation reports, of course, but we can consult some sporadic surveys of the Superintendence of Archaeological Heritage, confirming that the area at the perimeter of square cells dated to the 1st century after Christ. The building types show quite clearly the transformation process. At first, the free central area here was filled with houses of very simple type, semi-rural types, with external staircase, you see here, aggregating on a serial occasional basis, the Proferro houses. The outer husk of the block has a geometric regularity is maintained by the old substrata, and here the transformation process is much longer and deeper. These are row houses, or this one, transformed over time into multi-family row houses and then recast into linear houses. You see that this part of the city is very dense. This is Campo de Fiori Square, so we are in the very center of Rome, and we are quite surprised to enter inside the courtyard and to find a semi-rural dwelling, semi-rural houses. In fact, they are Proferro houses, from the Latin profero, to put outside, meaning the stair put it outside, as you see here, and in the country of Rome, they are quite common, not in Rome, of course. In fact, this row house you see here, they were built in Borgo Santo Spirito, but were in the early Middle Age spread all over Rome. And we have here the row houses in the perimeter of the block. On the right side you see houses, row houses in Via de Cappellari, in the semi-abandoned Via de Cappellari, and the houses remain close to the original form. On the left, row houses extensively transformed in the 19th century, you see here. In Via del Pellegrino, a road much more commercial and used by pilgrims going to the Vatican. It's still possible to clearly recognize the original type with double window and double doors. Those are the type of houses on the right, types of houses with synchronic variants of casa con bottega here. Yeah, this is a casa con bottega, shop house and atrium house. Here in the center, you see the fusing together of two row houses to form a new type of building, the linear house, which is still nowadays in use and was employed in all the expansion of Rome in the 19th century. You see here, this is one row house, another row house. They fuse together, they put in common a staircase here in the pertinent area and form a new type of building which arises from the matter of the row house existing. Now, let's see a second process, how the substrata of the Greek monumental theaters has given rise to both basic and specialized building. On the left here, you can see the transformation of theater and circuses. You see here, for example, Pompeii's theater, the overlapping of Middle Age and Renaissance fabric to the ancient substrata. Here, of course, Piazza Navona, Circuit Domitianus, and here the Odeon. All the fabric. Here we have Baldus Theater, which is a glorious example of transformation, which we will see now a little bit deeper. You see on the right here the overlapping of the actual fabric to the ancient Baldus Theater built in 19 before Christ, and which has had a quite complex transformation. It's composed by two parts: the crypta, this one, and the cavea, this one. Cavea, the steps, and the scena, the stage here. The crypta mostly generated base building, and the cavea mostly palazzos, specialized building. You see here the crypta. The existing fabrics confirm the substrata of the porch. The exedra here was transformed in a lime kiln where lime was obtained by the calcination of ancient remains. The 12th century porch merchant house are built often in the unusual three doors variant, here on Piede delle Botteghe Oscure and Piede Delfini, here on the right. For fabric traders, and this part, the coloring in yellow indicates row houses merging into one single property building. The access to the different houses is one property, so it can't be from outside, and the new path is formed here to give access to the different unities. The facade is made regular, and the embryo of a palazzo is formed here. A special building arises on the west side here. By reversing inside the structure of a serial fabric, it's like if this structure of the fabric is reversed inside, and this is the conservatory of Santa Caterina, built in 16th century by Sant'Ignazio di Loyola, to host and assist the daughters of prostitutes, the Collegio delle Vergini Miserabili Pericolanti, Miserable Virgin at Risk, and the Church of Santa Caterina. This photo, this model explains very clearly, I think, the situation of the substrata. The level of ancient substrata here is 5 to 7 meters below the actual level. So we can understand how it's something underlying and communicated geometry in not direct way, but very permanent, very constant way. This is a model, a constructive model on Via dei Delfini. You see how the merchant houses were all porched houses. And these are photo of row houses in Via dei Delfini in a different shape. This detail showing the complexity of the tectonic nodes and the different layers of construction, with the views of the porch column. This is a recasting of row houses in Via dei Delfini. It was the part in yellow we have seen before, and we can remark how the composition of the facade is the typical, began to be the typical composition of the Roman palazzo, with the base part arriving to the window sill, all windows, a serial rhythmic facade which try to unify the multiplicity, the complexity of the pre-existing row houses. The palazzo stands on the third house of Sant'Ignazio di Loyola, the sense they were not so poor at the time, you see. Now let's see the transformation in the second area, that of the cavea. These are some reconstruction on the right, some reconstruction proposed by archaeologists of the medieval fragmentation of the ancient structure. See here, the cavea, now inside the Jewish ghetto, was filled at first by a fragmented settlement of some noble families, fortified house lying on the ancient steps, the Castellum Aureum. Then most of the area was acquired by the Mattei family between 1540 and 1580, who organized it with a unitary introverted structure, the Insula Mattei. The process is typical of many Roman families, such as Massimo and Altieri, and give rise to major palaces. For example, here, Palazzo Caetani, this one, we can follow the phases, the formation phases, not historical interpretation, but logic and architectural. The first phase is the acquisition and unification of row houses unities and overturning external roads inside the property for obvious reason of distribution. The other phase is the formation of building road and connection road, just like in a fabric, inside the building. And at the end, the base fabric is transformed into specialized building, like many small towns, to use an expression by Alberti, through the formation of internal road and internal squares. So, this is a theoretical interpretation of the process. The new spatial buildings arises as a fabric unified by internal road. This is the matter, this is the way at first the builder, after the architect, has transformed the matter in a spatial building. It explains a process common also to quite all Roman palazzos, from which we can acquire a noteworthy consideration for the contemporary design, in my opinion. The palazzo is not just an invention of the architect, nor it's formed as an evolution of a building type, but it's the critical result of the dialectic process between fabric and building. And this, in my opinion, is very important for the architect and to understand the way we can intervene in the historical centers with the spatial building. This is another example of a palazzo designed by a famous architect, Capomoderno, is Palazzo Mattei di Giove, well known. The palace has internal distribution. You see where the staircase is the vertical continuation of the path of the courts. The facade of the courtyard are considered more architecturally remarkable than the external ones, proving that this phenomenon is conscious and give rise to an aesthetic synthesis. This is remarkable from my point of view. The internal facade is so true that it's a fabric that the internal facade are more important than the external one. Okay, those are other facades. Okay, we are a little bit late. As the bulbous one, all the other ancient theaters had formed substrata for new building palazzos and so on. So, just to give an idea, this is Palazzo Savelli, which was built on the ruins of Theatre of Marcellus by Baldassare Peruzzi. You see here on the right, here, this is the palazzo built on the ruins of the building. This one is Palazzo Massimo alle Colonne, always by Baldassare Peruzzi, and was built on the remains of Odeon of Domitianus. And you can see very clearly the shape of the palazzo and all the dwellings which were built on the substrata has taken this shape, changing the matter and transforming in a new building. This is the Theatre of Pompeius. The transformation is quite different. It gives rise mostly to base building with some specialized part here, which is Palazzo Pio. This is the urbe, the former urbis Severiana, the ancient indication of the former position. And this is the actual building, linea houses formed on the the geometry of the previous theater. So, Piazza Navona, built on the stadium of Domitianus, is the best known example of transformation of an ancient substrata. Everybody knows that Piazza Navona was built on the ruins of the theater of the Circus of Domitianus. This is the plan of the modern transformation made in the 30s and testifies of the crisis of the organic process. The crisis takes place in Rome in the mid-19th century, when at urban scale we have conspicuous demolition, like everywhere in Europe, with some great restructuring road that destroys the character of the fabric. This approach continues the fascism, a period of disastrous intervention from the historic fabric. But it must be said, however, that in Rome also a culture of attention to fabrics was developed. This interest comes also from the studies of Gustavo Giovannoni, the founder of this school, who had proposed a new way of intervening in the historic fabrics, avoiding the rigid geometric grid in use in international architecture by proposing a realistic attitude toward the existing building. The plan of Corso di Rinascimento, the reconstruction of Corso di Rinascimento by Arnaldo Foschini, although destructive, proposes a logical continuity in the reconstruction. It's a realistic kind of redesign of the old fabric. The Foschini reconstruction design is in some way an interpretation of an urban process. It would be interesting to analyze. It's like to reconstruct the idea of a row house and to make the process of merging together the different row houses to form different types that were used in rebuilding the demolition of Corso Rinascimento. A process from which also arise, in my opinion, some of the specific character of much Roman modernity, as in Libera, De Renzi, Capponi, and so on. It would be interesting to know how many of the reflection of the 30s, the reflection of also by Foschini, were transmitted to Roman typological school. Here we have no time to deal with the topic, but maybe we will have the opportunity to discuss it in the parallel session. There are some papers presented about this kind of problem. So to conclude, I believe that Rome communicates to architects, geographers, planners, an idea of urban form eternal, but as a paradox unstable. This idea is absolutely modern and fertile for the contemporary architects. It allows us to consider the past not only as evidence, history as a dusty museum, but living matter for modern life. It also gives a different meaning to terms as creation and invention. The contemporary design as the last phase, innovative and provisional of an ongoing process. Rome is, in this sense, even today, an extraordinary lesson. Thank you very much for your